You don't realize fear is controlling your life, because it never screams, it sounds reasonable, it sounds smart, it sounds like your own voice, and one day you wake up and realize you didn't choose this life, fear did. Fear ruled my decisions for years. I never called it fear, I called it caution, I called it common sense, I called it reality. Those words sounded clean, they sounded responsible, they sounded like something a serious person would say. My name is Ethan Miller, I grew up in a calm town with slow traffic and polite neighbors, nothing dramatic, nothing wild, a place where people plan ahead and rarely change course. As a kid I had loud ideas, I wanted to travel, I wanted to build something from nothing, I wanted to speak on a stage and make strangers listen, I wanted to live in a way that felt sharp and awake. Fear was already there, but small, like a shadow behind a chair. It did not attack, it advised. It said be careful, it said do not embarrass yourself, it said wait until you were sure, and I listened, because the voice sounded smart. It sounded like it knew the rules of the world. Over time that voice got stronger, not because it became wiser, but because I kept feeding it. Each time I chose the safest option, fear relaxed, and I confused that relaxation with happiness. I felt relief, I felt calm, I felt protected, then later I felt empty. I did not have words for it, so I called it adulthood, I called it being practical. I watched other people take risks, I smiled, I nodded, and inside I judged them. I said they were reckless, I said they were lucky, I said they were different. Fear loved those thoughts, because if they were different then I did not have to try, if they were lucky then I did not have to move. Fear likes labels, they keep your world small, and my world became small in quiet ways, not through disaster, but through tiny choices, a skipped conversation, a delayed email, an idea I wrote down then hid, a call I never made. I kept thinking I was protecting myself from pain, but what I was really protecting was my routine. I built a life where nothing went wrong, and then I noticed something. Nothing truly happened either, no real story, no heat in the blood, only the steady hum of days that looked the same, and fear sat in the center of it like a manager, not loud, not cruel, just certain, and certainty can be a cage when it is borrowed from fear. After college I took a job that looked perfect to everyone else, a steady salary, clean benefits, polite meetings, and a clear ladder to climb. Fear approved instantly. Fear loves ladders because they tell you where to step. I told myself passion could wait. I told myself I would explore later. Later became a comfortable word. Later is a pillow fear puts over your face, not to hurt you, just to keep you quiet. My friend Daniel Carter moved to Austin to chase a business idea. He was nervous. He admitted it, and he still went. I acted supportive. I said I respected him. Inside I felt superior. Fear whispered that I was the stable one, the smart one, the adult one. I believed it. My mornings turned into a script: alarm, shower, coffee, drive, desk, inbox, lunch, more inbox, drive back, dinner, sleep, repeat. Coworkers praised my reliability, family praised my stability, and I smiled because praise is soothing, but the smile did not reach the deeper part of me. The deeper part stayed still, like a lake with no wind. I began to measure life by what I avoided conflict, I avoided awkward moments, I avoided chances that might make me look foolish. Fear framed it as discipline, as self-control, as maturity, and that framing worked for a long time, until one night I sat in my apartment with the lights dim, listening to the city breathe through the window, and I realized I could not remember the last time I felt real excitement, not entertainment, not a quick laugh at a show, but that bright feeling that says you are here, you are awake, you are doing something that matters to you. Fear responded fast. It said excitement is overrated. It said calm is safer. It said stable people do not chase feelings, and I nodded at the voice even though my chest felt heavy. That heaviness became familiar, and familiar pain can look like truth. I started to understand that fear did not need to threaten me, it only needed to sound reasonable. Because I was addicted to being reasonable, I wanted to be the person who never caused trouble, never embarrassed himself, never stepped out of line, and fear offered me a deal: be careful and you will be safe. I signed the deal again and again without reading what it cost. A weekend visit to my parents should have felt warm, and it did. The smell of the kitchen, the quiet hum of an old house, the way the neighborhood looked the same. But something else happened there, something small. My mother asked me a simple question: are you happy? She asked it while drying a glass, like it was a normal thing to ask. Fear tightened inside me. I laughed and said I was fine. I changed the subject. I asked about the garden. Fear loves the word fine. Fine means no risk. Fine means no truth. Later that night I stood in my old bedroom, looking at the things I kept from childhood: a notebook with half-written ideas, a cheap microphone I once used to record silly stories, postcards of cities I dreamed about. The kid who owned those things was not fearless, but he moved anyway. He tried, he failed, he tried again. Fear existed back then too, but it did not sit on the throne, it sat in the corner. As I looked at those objects I felt something like grief, not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet ache for a life I did not let myself live. Fear tried to soothe me. It said you grew up, it said dreams change, it said you cannot be young forever, and some of that was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that I did not replace those dreams with better ones, I replaced them with safety, and safety does not fill the same space. The next morning I drove back to my apartment slowly, watching the road line slide under the car like time, and I replayed memories of all the moments I avoided, the internship I skipped because I might fail, the trip I canceled because it felt uncertain, the conversation I never started because I might be misunderstood. Fear told me you avoided mistakes, but another thought arrived, clear and sharp: you also avoided becoming someone. You cannot grow in a room you never leave. Fear does not say that. Fear edits your memory like a movie trailer. It shows the painful scenes, it hides the quiet wins, it zooms in on embarrassment, it deletes the parts where you learn something. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew one thing: the life I called realistic was also a life built around fear, and I had been praising the architect. Monday morning brought a new face to the office. Her name was Laura Bennett. She joined our team with a calm confidence that did not feel like arrogance. She asked questions, she admitted what she did not know, she laughed easily, and none of it seemed to cost her dignity. Fear dislikes that kind of freedom, because freedom makes fear look smaller. Laura had moved across states twice, she had switched careers, she had started projects that did not work. She spoke about it like weather, not like shame. Fear whispered that she was unstable, but something in me resisted that label, because she looked alive, and I looked organized, and those are not the same. During a break she asked what I liked to do outside work. I listed safe answers: movies, podcasts, walks, fear-approved hobbies. Laura listened, then asked a different question: what do you want to do? Not what do you do, what do you want? Fear answered before I could: I want stability, I want security, I want a predictable path. I said it with a practiced smile, but the words tasted flat, like chewing paper. Laura nodded politely, but her eyes held a small pause, as if she was waiting for the real answer to arrive. That pause followed me home. In the evening I tried to relax, but my mind kept returning to the question: what do you want? Fear kept offering substitutes. It offered comfort, it offered safety, it offered approval, it offered the promise of no sudden problems, and for the first time I noticed how fear argued. It did not say do not live, it said be sensible. It did not say hide, it said plan. It did not say you were scared, it said you were responsible, and it always used the same trick. It used the past. Remember that time you looked foolish, remember that time you were rejected, remember that time you tried and it hurt. Fear spoke like a lawyer, building a case against my own desires, and I had been paying it to do that work for years. Lying in bed I listened to my own breathing and realized something that made my stomach tighten. Fear was not protecting my life, it was protecting my comfort, and comfort had become a prison with soft walls. You do not notice soft walls until you try to push them. The next weeks felt normal on the surface: meetings, deadlines, coffee, small talk, but inside something shifted. I began to notice fear in tiny moments, not in big crises, in the smallest choices. I would open my phone to message someone and stop. Fear would say do not bother them. I would think of applying for a program and pause. Fear would say you will waste time. I would imagine a new project and feel a spark. Fear would say you will quit. I started to see a pattern. Fear always spoke in absolutes, always predicted the worst, always treated embarrassment like danger, always treated uncertainty like a cliff, and it loved one word more than any other: someday. Fear said someday you will travel, someday you will start that thing, someday you will speak up, someday you will feel ready, and I realized someday was a place fear invented, a place that never arrives. One morning I woke up with a quiet question: what if I do not listen once, not forever, not dramatically, just once? Fear tightened. It said this is unnecessary, it said you are fine, it said do not create problems, but curiosity pushed back. Curiosity is a softer force than courage, but it can open the same door. That day I signed up for a class I had avoided for years. A public speaking workshop at a community center. Nothing extreme, nothing that would ruin my life, just a room with strangers. Fear tried to stop me. It said you will sound awkward, it said they will judge you, it said you will regret it. I went anyway. My hands felt slightly sweaty when I walked in, my heart beat faster. Fear sat on my shoulder like a heavy bird, but the room was ordinary, the people were ordinary, the instructor was kind. I spoke a few sentences, my voice shook a little, nobody laughed, nobody attacked me, I survived. And more than that, I felt something I had missed: a clean, bright edge of life, the feeling of doing something because I chose it, not because it was safe. When I left the building the air felt different, the street lights looked sharper. Fear went quiet for a moment, not gone, just confused, because its favorite prediction did not come true, and that is how fear loses power, one small disproof at a time. After that class I did not transform overnight. Fear does not leave just because you challenge it once. It returns quickly, it adapts, it tries new arguments. But I had seen the trick now. I began to run small experiments. I would do one thing each week that fear disliked. I would ask a question in a meeting instead of staying silent. I would share an idea before it was perfect. I would invite someone for coffee without rehearsing the message 10 times. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it was awkward, sometimes nothing happened. But the important part was this: I lived through all outcomes. As time moved forward, I noticed something subtle but important. Fear did not disappear when my life improved, it simply changed tactics. Before it used comfort, now it used doubt. It said, maybe this growth is temporary, maybe you are pretending, maybe you will return to who you were. Fear likes to question progress, it tries to erase momentum by planting uncertainty. I learned not to fight those thoughts aggressively. Fighting gives fear attention, instead I acknowledged them and kept moving. Movement weakens fear more than argument. Each week I did something slightly uncomfortable, not to prove anything, but to stay honest. Honesty became my new anchor. When I acted honestly, fear lost its ability to confuse me. I also noticed how silence had changed. Before, silence was heavy, now it felt open, like space instead of emptiness. That difference mattered. I began journaling at night, not with structure, just sentences, thoughts, questions, fears written down so they could not spin endlessly in my head. Fear hates paper. When written, it looks smaller, clearer, less powerful. I saw patterns in my thoughts: how often fear predicted reactions that never came, how often it exaggerated consequences, how often it assumed rejection before evidence. Writing turned fear into data, not destiny. I also started paying attention to my body, tension in my shoulders when I avoided something, calm in my chest when I acted despite fear. My body knew the truth before my mind did. Fear speaks loud in the head, but truth whispers in the body. Learning that changed how I listened. One evening I stood on a balcony overlooking the city, lights blinking like quiet signals, and I felt something unfamiliar: gratitude, not forced, not dramatic, just present. Gratitude for having noticed fear at all. Many people never do, they live inside it and call it fate. Noticing fear is the first freedom, because once you see it, you can choose how close it stands to you. I realized fear had shaped my identity for years. I thought I was cautious, reserved, practical, but those were behaviors, not identity. Identity is flexible, fear tries to freeze it, growth melts it again. I allowed myself to change without apology. At work, new challenges arrived: deadlines, expectations, responsibility. Fear tried to return to old habits. It said retreat, it said simplify, it said lower your ambition. But ambition felt different now. It was not about proving worth, it was about expression, expressing what I cared about. Expression does not need permission. Fear tried to make ambition heavy, but I kept it light, playful, experimental. I learned that seriousness feeds fear, curiosity starves it. So I stayed curious. I asked questions, I allowed mistakes, I treated problems like puzzles, not threats. Relationships shifted too. Some people felt closer, some drifted away. Fear said this means you were losing people, but I saw the truth. Alignment changes connections. When you change honestly, not everyone can walk with you, and that is not failure, it is clarity. I learned to stop shrinking to maintain comfort. Shrinking invites fear back into the center. Expansion creates space, and space allows breath. I started choosing conversations over silence, clarity over guessing. Fear hates clear communication because clarity removes its power. There were still hard days, days where motivation faded, days where fear felt heavier. I stopped judging those days. Judgment feeds fear, acceptance dissolves it. I allowed rest without guilt, reflection without panic, pauses without quitting. Fear used to confuse rest with surrender. Now I knew the difference. Rest was preparation, surrender was silence, and I no longer lived in silence. Even on quiet days, my inner voice stayed present, calm, patient. I realized that confidence was not loud. It did not announce itself, it showed up quietly when I trusted my decisions. Confidence grew from consistency, not intensity. Fear thrives on extremes, either total safety or total risk, but life lives in the middle, in repeated honest actions. I built trust with myself by keeping small promises, showing up when I said I would, stopping when I needed to. That trust became a shield fear could not penetrate. Looking back, I saw how fear wants to find my future using my past, but the future does not owe loyalty to the past. Fear wants history to repeat, growth wants history to inform. There is a difference. I learned to respect my past without obeying it. Mistakes became references, not chains. Fear lost one of its strongest weapons: memory without context. The story I told myself changed. Before it was about avoiding loss, now it was about pursuing meaning. Meaning does not promise comfort, but it offers direction, and direction calms fear naturally. When you know why you move, fear becomes less convincing. It still speaks, but its arguments feel hollow, like echoes in a large room, noticeable but not controlling. Today my life is not perfect, and I no longer need it to be. Perfection is another fear costume. I choose presence, I choose honesty, I choose movement. Fear walks beside me now, not ahead of me. It whispers sometimes, but I listen with discernment, not obedience. The quiet truth remains clear: fear once shaped my days, now my choices do, and that difference is everything.